Hello, welcome to Vlog 1. This is the first vlog on my new channel, Cali Vlogs. I decided to separate Cali Vlogs from my Cali Timecat main channel. I'm still Cali Timecat, but that space I'm dedicating to film reviews. I gather from the YouTube algorithm that it's best to concentrate on a single subject. That works best for the algorithm, so that space is for films and this space is for my vlogs. And if I think of anything else, and there will be other stuff I'm going to create content on over time, I hope, then I'll create another channel for those matters. However, the vlog is going to be encompassing many different subjects because it's a vlog, it's about different subjects. That's the nature of vlogs. First of all, I thought I'd talk about neurodiversity simply because I've had an assessment and the result was that I have cognitive neurodivergency. I got a report and it's dozens and dozens of pages long. I had a whole day of assessment. I had more than 7 hours worth of intensive assessment by a company that specialises in neurodiversity. And there's probably areas that they didn't explore that much simply because it was outside their remit, such as ADHD. It did come up a little bit, but I'm mentioning that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's not exactly a great phrase from what I gather. It's not the ideal acronym. I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 24th of January. I'm planning to edit it and publish it by Saturday, 27th of January, 2024. So last night we had quite a storm. I think other parts of the UK were more badly affected, but even here in London, it was incredibly windy. The wind was making a lot of noise. I couldn't sleep. So I listened to a podcast. Global radio and communications company. Global does lots of podcasts. They're the sort of LBC, Capital. I listened to a lot of James O'Brien, Natasha Devon, David Lammy, Nick Abbott, Clive Ball, Sangeeta Maiska. They're amongst my favourites. Well, Katie Breathwick and Sam Pittis have produced a podcast called You're Wrong About ADHD, and I found it both educating and informative, a very interesting listen. In fact, too stimulating a listen to continue during the night because I was finding the intermittent jingle and some of the adverts were waking me up more fully, and that's not exactly what I need when I'm trying to get some sleep. So I stopped it eventually and just started listening to the radio. I found it fascinating. There were a few substantial differences between the experiences of Katie and Sam, although they've been friends for over 20 years. And a couple of years ago, they discovered around the same time that they have ADHD. They had diagnosis, and Sam reacted, I suppose, negatively, as in he doesn't like the fact that he's ADHD and he resents that people call it a superpower, whilst Katie embraced it more. And yet, given what they said about their experiences, and it is worth a listen when it's the right time for you, it seemed like Sam had understood stereotypical behaviours that fitted into the criteria from his childhood. And so as an adult, emotional deregulation, he would be full of energy during the week and he'd cope with it in a certain way, and then he would crash at the weekends. Meanwhile, Katie had more of the experience, which is typical for women. The signs aren't as obvious, or at least ADHD was often looked at in boys and men. It's been a very gendered definition, and there's a really interesting book on, going on a slight tangent, there's a really interesting book by Caroline Criado Perez about how so many things in life are designed with men in mind. That's the default person. Then women have often been overlooked. If things are designed for one specific gender, then other people don't fit in. I mean, one thing is like heart attacks. I think the symptoms of heart attacks are usually described, until recently, they're usually the symptoms that men have experienced, and they're often quite different in women. And so it's important to look out for other signs. If they get overlooked, there could be deadly consequences. We need to be aware of differences in our demographics. I've noticed for me, one of the aspects which seems to be a signal for my neurodiversity is I've got a hugely detailed memory. I can remember things in a great deal of detail going back for years, and I seem to have a very good recall for subjects like films. I can remember storylines in a lot more detail than some of the friends I go to the cinema with. Not everything, it does vary by genre. There's certain genres I favour. I will pick up a lot. Some of the things that I related to a lot from having heard what Katie and Sam were talking about. For a start, admin. I think I have difficulty with certain forms of admin. Katie Breathwaite was talking about how, as a new mother, when going to visit a friend, she was really amazed by how this friend was able to look after her baby, make coffee and cook and talk several things at the same time, whilst she found that she needed to focus on something. What I would say, I'm often amazed when say I'm having a conversation with my boss and she's multitasking, she's writing up our conversation at the same time as we're having a one-to-one meeting. I find it easier to focus on one particular subject. I relate a lot to Katie in that respect. I remember when I worked at this community centre quite a few years ago now, when someone was talking to me, I would stop typing. I would want to actually concentrate on what they were saying. This lovely chap, this guy who worked in the play centre, he mockingly said, "Oh, you don't seem able to multitask." He said it in a way that I thought, oh gosh, I'm deficient in that respect. I can do things at a certain level. There's a lot of information coming from many different sources all the time in life. We're picking up sounds, we're picking up visual clues all of the time, smells, all our senses, all 5 senses working over time. That's a XTC song. The sensory overload can be overwhelming and it can distract. And so if I'm trying to concentrate, I have to block out some of it. If there's a lot of noise going on, having sound cancelling headphones is so useful. It really is so useful. If someone interrupts me, it can throw me off my pace on the task I was doing. And yet other people seem to pick up, carry on from where they left off. Throughout my life, if I look back at my early years when I was growing up, there are times when people actually said that I was thick, I was stupid because I was not able to process things in the same way as they were. I just had a different way of thinking. And yet in other respects, I could remember a lot. I could remember lots of things that they said weeks later. I remember when things happened, dates. And sometimes I pick up on useless information. I haven't yet found my niche. I've often ended up in the wrong job. I'm doing the wrong tasks. The type of work that I would excel in, talking of which, I seem to be fairly good at Excel spreadsheets. Other software, some of it really confounds me. I'm slower than other people at it. Once I've got used to a particular software and I get on with it, I think I can do really well in it. So there's aspects of my life that I'm discovering about now, well into my adulthood. ADHD and autism and all forms of neurodiversity are often picked up now when people are very young, in teenage years, 13 to 17, before they become an adult. One of the things I picked up again from this podcast was there's such a long waiting list that it isn't always so easy. And someone who is 13, if they've got a 5-year wait, the assessment is timed out simply because it starts fresh as an adult. You go into a different form of assessment. There's quite a few problems explained very well on this podcast. It's worth listening to that. It's clear that there's a lot that is missing. And yet, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, my particular neurodiversity wasn't picked up on. I seemed to be able to hide it well. I learned in lots of ways how to fit in, similar in a way to how I learned to hide being LGBTQ. If you grow up in a hostile environment and people pick on you because you don't fit in, you adapt, you try and fit in as best as you can. So here I am, January 2024. During the last year, I found out an awful lot about myself on neurodiversity. I'm still learning a lot about other aspects of my life. I'm learning a lot on social media, in particular threads, where I'm following particular people who have ADHD. I'm following other people who talk a lot about LGBTQ matters, for instance, the history of queer women. Really fascinating stuff, and I think I'll cover that in one of my next film reviews. However, for this particular vlog, just want to say is that in some ways you can see neurodiversity as a superpower or just a different way of viewing our humanity. People are all different. We all think in different ways. It's just that for many years I actually saw it as a subpower. I thought I was deficient. It's very easy if you've had a lot of people telling you that you're an underperformer, it's easy to believe it. It becomes like a voice recorder repeated over in your own head. And I'm finally challenging that in a much more profound way than before. That's the positive side of it. I may talk more about neurodiversity. I may talk about how to overcome that imposter syndrome level of ADHD. Imposter syndrome on a life level. It's like if everyone else seems to be able to do things better, then you can end up feeling inferior. In some ways, I always knew that I could do some things differently, so I managed to balance out some of that. I read books like No More Throwaway People about time banking, and through that I reinforced in my mind that every human being is valuable. Another thing that Katie talked about was she described it as being shabby. She described herself as being a shabby middle-aged woman. Those were her words. And I really related to that. I'm not very good at applying makeup. I know how to do it, but I don't tend to do it at all. I can forget to brush my hair. It's not a great thing in this visual world. We're judged a lot on appearance. Throughout so many years, I've been criticised by friends. Friendly criticism often, constructive criticism, but still criticism. I've not really made as much of an effort to look good as they have. I've been on holiday with friends who woken up 2 hours before me, woken up say 7 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. and spent 2 hours applying makeup, getting their eyeshadow right, getting everything looking so perfect for the morning, putting their face on. I've just rolled out of bed, had a shower and gone down for breakfast if we're at a B&B or some sort of accommodation. And I've noticed that sort of difference. That there was one holiday I went on with a friend. This was about 14 and a half years ago. And I started explaining what I was suspected was neurodiversity to this particular friend. But it was a very difficult time in my life at that point, and explaining this to that friend really backfired badly, as in I don't think she understood. And she actually told me at the start that anything you say, you can't unsay. I do feel like I was judged by that friend from that point onwards. And we fell out so much during that holiday. After that holiday, we didn't end up speaking ever again. Although I don't have any ill feelings towards her. I don't have any sense of ill will. I hope she's doing really well. At that time, I found her frustrating. I think she found me frustrating. We were on holiday in California. And I remember we were in Monterey catching buses, caught a bus down to the Big Sur for a day. And on the way back, another passenger noticed that we were actually travelling together but not talking. And she actually gently encouraged us to have a chat together. And I thought it was a really wonderful gesture. Americans seeing two Brits on holiday, not getting on, and making some effort to try to help us get on. And it probably did help us for a little while, but we just still fell out too badly. Our differences were irreconcilable. I was in a very difficult position anyway. I may talk more about that situation. Obviously, I won't mention that particular friend in any detail because I've lost touch with her anyway, but everyone deserves privacy. I mentioned about threads. One thing about my vlog is always been positive. I'm not going to say anything towards other people that isn't helpful. There are people that I definitely don't get on with. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to put distance between me and them. And when it comes to threads, that means blocking them. People I don't get on with, there's no point arguing with them. Just going to make my points, talk about how I feel. And if there's an impossible situation that can't be resolved, then the only thing is we have to coexist in this world. That's the nature nature of life. One more point is what Sam Pizzis was saying about how at times he felt it wasn't real, the neurodiversity. And I understand that as well. I felt I was somewhere in between Katie and Sam in that I could relate to some aspects of both of their experiences. And with Sam, he was saying how he felt that everyone has some struggles in life, and sometimes he could relate to how ordinary people felt. I think it's that part of humanity that we all want to belong. We don't want to stand out. We all want to fit in. We don't want to be different. I've dealt with that for many years through being LGBTQ. It's a marginalised community. It's about 10% of the population. I'll probably talk about that in another vlog. But during my early life, I tried to fit in. I tried to hide. I tried to fit in as normal as possible and not get picked on by other kids in school. And there's this neurodiversity level. Neurodiversity, hiding that is called masking. Don't particularly like that word, but it's used a lot. And I think I managed to try to fit in as best as I could and hide aspects of my neurodiverse ways of thinking. To some extent, I succeeded. In other ways, I didn't. So, in a way, perhaps underperformed throughout my life. Maybe now's the chance with the realization I can find out what I'm really good at. So, that's this episode, January 2024. Thanks for watching. I'd love to know your thoughts on the subject. Thanks if you subscribe, and please like if you like. And bye for now. I'm planning to edit it and publish it, upload it by Saturday, 27th of July. 27th of January.